What if I told you multiplayer games aren't played on a shared universe? That every player lives in their own isolated game and the server's just stitching everything together as it sees fit? Yeah, this video might just break how you think about multiplayer games. And maybe a little bit of our reality as well. When you boot up an online multiplayer game, what do you think actually happens? Well, I always imagine some shared digital world floating out there on the internet that all players interact with using their own machines. That what you do is basically climb into your character's head that is itself a part of this universe, and through that vessel you interact with the game and other players. Well, turns out that's not the case. And if you're anything like me, charming, brilliant, and oh so innocent, chances are you might have thought so too. Before we explain the actual process, let's first define some key networking concepts so we're all on the same page. A client is a player, like you, running the game on their own machine. But it's not playing with others directly, it's just receiving data and instructions from the server, rendering them in your own local simulation. The server is the brain of the operation. It handles all communication and makes the final calls, whether a player moved, shot, took damage, healed, picked up an item, everything. It runs its own version of the game and ensures all clients stay in sync. If anything's out of line, the server corrects it. A host is a special case when one client's machine also acts as a server. They still play like a normal client, but their computer is also the brain. That means that they get the lowest latency, but if they disconnect, the game goes. When you boot up a game, you're not joining the game. Even when the server already exists and others are playing and your friends tell you, come join us. When you hit join, you don't join. You're starting your own version of the game on your own. Here's how it works. Your station runs the entire game as a separate universe, very much like a single player game. And what about all the other players you see? They're just data sent from the server, reenacted as actors inside your own simulation. The server is like the ether of the game multiverse. It's what binds everything together and enables communication between all the simulating machines. Meanwhile, the server runs a separate parallel version of the game, and through that it makes sure that all client versions experience the same thing. If any simulation is off course, the server snaps it into place. That's why you often see people teleport from position to position when you or they are lagging. When some property is validated by the server, it's called server authority. We'll touch a bit on that later. It's kind of like the Matrix, but instead everyone's running their own metrics and the architect has to sync all of them. And in this story, if some Neo comes along, the architect would have none of it and fix every discrepancy this dude creates. And possibly also kick him out of the Matrix altogether. This multiverse concept is clearest when you lose connection mid-game. You might still be able to move around, cast spells, and even hit monsters, but nothing reacts. That's because your version of the game is running locally, disconnected from the network so nothing comes through. The best example of just how much of an illusion multiplayer games are is how shooting takes place. Hold on to your lug nuts, cause this one drove me crazy when I first learned about it. So, you're about to shoot. You click and bam! A bullet flies out and hits. Feels snappy, right? But actually, that bullet you just saw? It's fake. Your machine shows it instantly only so it feels responsive, but it's actually hollow, just a visual. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the server gets the message called a server RPC, which I'll explain later, from your machine. It then spawns a real bullet in its version of the game and checks if it hit something. At the same time, it tells everyone else using what's known as a client RPC to spawn a fake bullet on your player's position in their universes so they see it too. Now here's the mind-blowing thing. Nobody sees the real bullet. You see your own fake bullet, other clients are seeing their own fake bullets, but the bullets you're all seeing are not the same one, as everyone has their own version of it. And the bullet that actually matters is entirely detached from all your versions. It only exists in the server's mind. And to top it all off, I'll just mention that the real bullet is usually invisible, because the server is not a client and doesn't really need to see it, only to calculate its position and know if it hit something. Wild, right? Now about these RPCs that I mentioned earlier, this is just short for remote procedure calls, which on the surface are basically simple orders that any network entity can send to another. For example, a client can send an RPC to the server saying, "My player pressed the shoot key, so do this." These are known as server RPCs. The second type of RPC is client RPCs, which, as the name suggests, are orders that the server hands out to all clients. For example, create a fake projectile at this position. So clients can send orders to the server and it can order them. Sounds pretty egalitarian, right? Well, surprisingly, it can be. In essence, there are two types of networking. One that uses a fairly balanced approach, and another that is quite authoritarian. Let's meet them. In this approach, the server really does control everything, and everything has to be approved by it before it ever registers in the network. This includes shooting, skill use, using portals, reloading, even player movement. All has to be approved by the server. That is, you can't do any of those until the server checks whether you have enough mana, ammo, stamina, or whatever may be limiting what you're trying to do. You might guess what the main issue with this is: poor responsiveness. If the game doesn't use responsive illusions, like the one from the shooting example from earlier, then every action you're trying to accomplish will register with a delay depending on your network connection strength. The request must travel from your machine, get approved, and travel back before it can be shown on your screen. This is fine for games like Civilization or others that don't require rapid movement and reflexes, but for platformers, no way. The second type is client authoritative networking. This approach enables the client to decide how things work, what transfers through the network and what doesn't. Here, the server's role is simply connect between the different clients and fulfill the orders as they come. The obvious issue with this type of networking is, of course, cheating. If the client can decide everything and someone manages to hack their game and change their health to 1 billion health points, the server will accept this without scrutiny, and thus the cheater will be invincible. In server authoritative networking, this doesn't happen, because when someone hacks their health amount, the server either ignores this change or rejects it. And when the cheater's HP drops to 0 on the server's version, the cheater dies regardless of what their local version says their HP should be. Such an elaborate system, and yet it's not perfect. We'll talk about lags, compensations, tick rates, and snapshots in a future video. But now, let's get philosophical, because that's where things can get really fun and weird. The misconception of thinking about networking as if the game is a pre-existing world that we choose to participate in is rooted in our grasp of the real world. As we see it in our daily lives, there's an objective reality, and we as people interact with it and with each other. But now, knowing the way networking works, it can make you wonder, could this be true to real life as well? Philosophers have debated the nature of reality long before video games have been around. But with the matrix theory being accepted recently as a valid candidate by many scientists, maybe this model of parallel realities is also a valid answer. Or perhaps the answer. Is there an objective reality, or are we all just sitting in the cave simulating everything alone on our own brains, only interacting with the environment through some ether we aren't aware of? I mean, we already know that our sense of reality is simply electrical pulses we interpret as sounds, colors, touch, taste. Maybe these are simply server signals reaching our minds. Could we all be alone, each in our own cave? Could our loved ones, our neighbors, enemies, and pets be nothing but a simulated flesh controlled by other sentient entities in different realities all on their own? These are the kind of thoughts that prevent me from uploading more frequently. Without them, I'd probably have time for weekly uploads. So yeah, that's the misconception most people have when they think about multiplayer games. But not you. You know the truth, and all the philosophical burden that comes with it. Let me know in the comments if you like these types of videos where I explain the misconceptions and interesting mechanics behind how gaming features actually work. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys!